Hi, I'm Elizabeth Beringer, and I'm going to talk to you today about the Feldenkrais Professional Training. I'm going to give you an overview and try to address a number of frequently asked questions. I know that there are many people who are considering training in San Diego who can't come and attend something here, or we haven't met before. You're being referred by somebody else, and so I thought could be a chance you can get a little bit of a sense of me, my style, and I can hopefully answer some questions, maybe questions you know you had or questions you didn't know you had. So the Feldenkrais training takes place over 3 to 4 years usually. This one goes for about 3.5 years and meets for 40 days a year. Those can be broken up in different ways. Sometimes people will do 2-month-long segments. What we're doing here in San Diego is 4 Tuesday through Saturday 5-day segments, and then 2 2-week segments to have a little more of an intensive experience. So there's 6 segments spread out over the year. And in the beginning of the training, the focus is on you working with yourself. So it's a really experientially based training in that everything you learn that you're going to do with other people, you experience yourself. In the beginning of the training, you do lots of the group work, the awareness through movement work. And of course, every day includes not only awareness through movement, but discussion, lecture, exercises, and we start hands-on work right from the beginning, although to start with, we work with basics of touch and the way we listen with our hands in the method, and we gradually build on that. The awareness through movement, there's a huge repertoire that was left to us by Feldenkrais, and then many of us have developed our own lessons as well. You will experience a broad base in that in the training, not every lesson because there are actually thousands of lessons. But what happens is by experiencing many of the lessons, there starts to be a kind of a logic, repeating strategies, repeating themes that happen in different orientations, and you essentially become a kind of living encyclopedia. You then, as the training goes on and as you become a practitioner, you can draw on those experiences in your practice as a professional in the method. And we really draw that out in the training. So it goes from the beginning, which is the maximum immersion in the experiential element. Well, it's always experiential, but in the work really that you're just doing, moving on the floor, in different positions, working with yourself, through applying that to more of a focus on working with other people. One of the big questions that people have, you have certain people who are going to take the training who are really focused on being professionals and really focused on being able to practice when they leave, when they graduate. And the training is very much oriented for people to be able to be professionals and have a practice at the end of the time. And we will offer individual support for people to meet their particular goals. Because everybody has their particular strengths and weaknesses. We look for a really diverse student body, and I'll say more about that later. But then there's also a group who is drawn to the training primarily for the personal growth aspect. And both people are welcome. Many Feldenkrais practitioners today got into the work because they had an important experience themselves of recovering from some kind of challenge, some kind of injury, and are drawn to try to do it professionally because of that. So that's also a group that's in the training, and you are also very welcome. People also, in my experience during the training, can kind of change between the two groups. Of course, you have people who are not really sure, and we don't mind the not really sure at all, because part of the philosophy of the method is when you can disengage a little from a goal, you can be in the process more. So all of those stances work for us, and we notice that people move between them as they go through the training. If you are coming into the training with a particular health challenge, we do really want to know about it ahead of time, and so that we're ready to support you and we know what the situation is for everybody. So I was going to say more about diversity in the group. That's another question people have, of what kind of background are we looking for. It's not as much the background as the kind of people we're looking for. We're looking for people who can participate in a experiential learning environment, in a non-traditional learning environment, and I'll say more about that. And every training program I've ever taught in or directed had a diversity of people in the group, different backgrounds. We can have people who are medical professionals, physical therapists, occupational therapists, doctors, people with alternative backgrounds such as acupuncture or different kinds of hands-on work. And then we have people who really have never done any touching, psychologists, people who maybe were cooks or hadn't necessarily settled on a profession yet. People who have found themselves physically unable to continue the work that they're doing, and that led them to Feldenkrais, and now they're ready to change profession. So we like very much having people with different backgrounds, and that means also the students will be learning from each other and supporting each other. The model is very much one of that it's a training for adults, and there's hopefully a mutual respect there from the staff to the students and the students to the staff. And we don't create an environment of infantilizing you and telling you how you should learn. Of course, the program presents a program of how we learn in the method, but students we will assume that you're going to take responsibility also for your learning. One of the big questions people have is about learning between segments, and what I'll do is provide you with ways of studying, suggestions for studying. There'll always be suggestions. So sometimes I'll make suggestions, homework suggestions, we'll bring them back into class, but nobody's going to check and see if you did it or not. It's the idea here is that we are engaged in learning and in learning about learning. So that's a subject for us. How do people learn about the habits that they have and develop healthier habits? How can you learn the Feldenkrais method in a way that's healthy and generative for you? Many people come in with baggage relating to their educational experiences in the past. A number of people who take the training are people who didn't necessarily fit into traditional learning situations. And we get people who are, let's say, very talented kinesthetically, but not maybe as verbal. Of course, we get also very verbal people. But this is the kind of learning that takes place here is going to be kinesthetic, and that can be a big attraction for people who haven't done that kind of learning, and it can be a big attraction for people who are very comfortable with that kind of learning, let's say. And again, that brings us back to the students also learning from each other and creating a tapestry of different talents and abilities as we move through the years together and work together. What else should I talk about? Okay, here we are during an Awareness Through Movement lesson in the training room. Thought it would be nice to have a feeling of the ambiance in the room.
So the students, this is actually a current training program. They're in somewhere in the beginning of their third year of training. And we just took some cuts from the ATM. As you can see, it's a lovely room. I really enjoy it. It's an old building, more than 100 years old, and there's nice beams on the ceiling. We've got a garden in the back. So in the class, of course, we engage in a good bit of the group work, what we call awareness through movement. And in addition, because it's a training, there is stopping and observing, and of course, investigation of the teaching pedagogy, where we'll look at how we teach and, of course, discuss the philosophy of the method. So the day is broken down. We often start with a movement lesson. Then there'll be lecture, discussion, so a number of group exercises where people are given tasks and to investigate certain things together. The model is not just a learning from the teacher, but really very much a collaborative learning process where also you learn from each other, and very much with the idea that active learners are more efficient learners, and there's lots of research that supports that. So it's definitely not a situation where people are just passively receiving information. And then, of course, we will be developing the hands-on work right from the beginning. Earlier I said the base of the work is kinesthetic learning, and of course that's true, but in order to be a professional, you have to be able to talk about what you're doing and understand something about the how of, if you will, the Feldenkrais magic when you do lessons, and they often can have really surprising outcomes. So here we're observing different students and the differences in how they shift their weight and how they're choosing to do the movement. So we often look at differences like that and try to understand what leads people to move in different ways. But anyway, as I was saying, when you experience the lesson, you also often have surprising results, and it's hard for people initially to understand how that could take place. But of course, there is a logic to it, and that is part of the subject of investigation for us. Now you can see the movements often progress from simpler kinds of connections, establishing relationship between different areas, and then bringing it into a more global action.
Okay, let me tell you a little more about myself and my experience. I got into the method relatively young. I first met Feldenkrais when I was 19 in San Francisco. I had no intention at the time of doing it as a profession, and who knew it could be a profession, really. And I just kept wanting to do more until finally I realized I was doing it and became a practitioner and have always stayed interested. The practice of the method presents so many different kinds of ways you can work and work with so many different kinds of people that it's really, I find it infinitely interesting. I've always had a general practice, meaning I've worked with all different kinds of people, and from very, very young children to elderly, to people with severe limitations, athletes. I like the stimulation of working with a wide variety of people, and at this point in my practice, I like the stimulation of working with people who've tried everything. I have directed trainings in the United States and in Europe, actually even more in Europe than in the United States. I've worked in probably 10 different countries, teaching in my own trainings or other people's trainings, and in many different parts of the United States. And really, I've participated in, let's say, the Feldenkrais method as it's grown around the world and gotten more known, and also as we've developed our ability to train people. I think that every training we get better at learning how to pass on the method, let's say. And that's something that's a big subject for myself with my colleagues. In addition to myself in the training, taking training in California is a big advantage in the sense that San Francisco was the place that Feldenkrais did his first training program outside of Israel. And you have in California, many of the most experienced people in the world are living in California, and so it's easy to get them to come and teach here. So we'll be lucky to have many of Feldenkrais' original students who have 30, 35 years of experience. Dennis Leary, David Zemach-Burson, Arlene Zones will all be a part of it. Donna Ray, who lives close by here. Bonnie Humiston, who also lives in San Diego. And Donna Wood is going to be the assistant, just in case you know her. She also lives in San Diego and will be present through the whole training. So we'll always have a staff of at least 2 and sometimes 3 people present. So, if you've read my bio, you know that I also do Aikido. And since Feldenkrais was a martial artist and took a lot of the inspiration for the creation of the method from his judo practice, I feel my Aikido background's a big help. And I certainly bring that into my training in both implicitly in the way that I teach and certain things that I emphasize, but also explicitly in that we will have some adjunct classes that people can participate in, which are done in a way to connect them to the learning in the training itself. And we'll just thread some of the themes from Aikido and the martial arts in a safe and accessible way, let's see, for people who haven't learned how to fall and do things like that. We'll thread that into the training too, and it can be a lot of fun. And that's one of the, in closing, I'll say, the training it's a lot of fun, and it's a very enriching experience, and it's designed so that at every step of the way, the learning is engaging and pleasurable. And that is not just to be crowd pleasers, but that's because that's fundamental to what we understand about how people learn and how people learn the best. So not only does that make the training an enjoyable and pleasurable experience, but it also is an effective way of learning. So I hope this was helpful. And those of you who are seriously considering joining the San Diego training, or my upcoming training in Switzerland, please feel free to contact us if you'd like to have a conversation with me directly. I'm quite open to that if you have further questions. So thank you, and I look forward to meeting you.